10 eerie and bloodthirsty Blade villains explained in detail. As we gradually approach the month of July, we could not be any more happy to tell you that that particular month marks the 48th anniversary of Blade. Introduced by writer Marvin ArthurWolfman and the late pencillerGene Colan, Blade first appeared as a supporting character in the 10th issue of the comic book The Tomb of Dracula.
It's Blade. It's the Daywalker.
His character became so popular amongst the fans that it soon led him to star in his own storylines. Hailed as a cross between a human and a vampire, Blade's mother was turned into a vampire just seconds before his birth, blessing him with the supernatural gift of having longevity and resistance to vampire bites. Having dedicated most of his life to slaying vampires and ridding the world of these blood-sucking monsters, Blade is feared as the most dreaded vampire hunter. So, one can only imagine how powerful these supernatural villains are that he gets to battle against in the first place. In today's video, we're going to talk about 10 of the eeriest and bloodthirsty Blade villains with their backstories explained. Before we get into the explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin. Deacon Frost. The supervillain by Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan needs no introduction. Everyone knows Deacon Frost as the vampire who was accountable for the death of Blade's mother and Hannibal King's vampirism. Frost made his first appearance in the 13th issue of the American horror comic book series The Tomb of Dracula back in 1973, and since then has been regarded as the arch nemesis of Blade.
Jesus Christ, I thought you'd be happy. You're finally being reunited with your mother and you act like this?
Allegedly, a scientist on the lookout for immortality, Frost had taken a young woman hostage in order to inject her with the blood of a recently slayed vampire. However, the victim's fiancé broke into the lab, and in the consequential brawl, Frost was inadvertently inoculated with the blood. That's how he not only became a vampire, but was also gifted with the unique talent of producing a doppelganger through the ones that he turned. With the new ability to generate an endless number of doppelgangers by biting each doppelganger and having them all under his control, Frost desired to be Lord of the Vampires, a position that was held by Dracula at the time. Apart from these, Frost also possessed exceptional attributes such as superhuman strength, speed, stamina, agility, and regenerative healing skills, along with the fact that he can shapeshift into a bat, wolf, and even mist. It was also Frost who turned Hannibal King into a blood-sucking monster. So, while Blade and King initially did not trust each other at all, the duo in due course joined hands to fight against Frost, demolishing him in his underground hideaway by stabbing him twice and leaving his body to be consumed by an explosion.
I cut you from your mother's womb.
Many years later, Blade did come across another vampire also addressing himself as Deacon Frost. The current one looked different from the original Frost, who was tall, white-haired, a late middle-aged man with red eyes and an 1860s Western European sense of clothing. The latter was later identified as a doppelganger, flaunting a southern sartorial sense and accent. The doppelganger, who tried to summon a supreme demon, eventually got devoured by it. The outstandingly vicious Deacon Frost was essayed by Stephen Dorff in the 1998 Wesley Snipes starring superhero horror film.
Nobody will have her but me!
Who are you?
You do not recognize me? I am Michael Morbius.
Morbius. Created by American comic book writer and editor Roy Thomas, and originally designed by the late penciler Gil Kane, Morbius first made his presence as an antagonist to Spider-Man in the 101st issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. It should not come as a surprise to you at all when we tell you that he soon went on to becoming a menacing, gritty, and dreadfully flawed anti-hero, not only in his own series, but in other titles as well. Conclusively, the most famous vampire in Marvel Comics and also a fan favorite, Morbius has been the most interesting enemy that Blade has had in his rogues gallery. A young man with a rare blood condition, Morbius was created in an experiment to try and cure his disease.
I am Michael Morbius.
Charmed.
His true identity goes back to Michael Morbius, a former award-winning biochemist, who was permeated with pseudo-vampiric superhuman attributes and bodily traits after undergoing an unsuccessful biochemical experiment that was supposed to cure his disease. In constant conflict with his pseudo-vampiric persona, his unquenchable thirst for human blood, and his consequent efforts to treat his dreadful form, Morbius the living vampire is quite the ruthless and terrifying vigilante.
Insurance until I determine you have given me the right information.
Not many know this, but it was Stephen Norrington, the director of the 1998 movie Blade, who appeared as Morbius in the alternate DVD ending. The character of Morbius is seen by hematologist Dr. Karen Jensen, standing on a rooftop far away, viewing Blade after his combat with Deacon Frost. Morbius was also supposed to be a part of the second installment of the Blade film franchise, appearing as the main villain, but apparently, Marvel did not allow director Guillermo del Toro to use the character. Morbius has also appeared in various media adaptations outside the world of comics, which ranges from animated shows to video games. Fans of the character will even get to see Jared Leto portray him in the upcoming live-action film adaptation that is set for January 2022 release. We are keeping our fingers crossed. Dracula. Credits have to be given to the one and only Dracula for irrefutably being the most powerful Blade villain. The character, which was made famous by author Bram Stoker, happens to be by far the most prevailing and prominent vampire to have existed in Marvel Comics. While it is true that Dracula is not the firstborn vampire, there is no denying the fact that it is he that is in charge of the Legion of the Undead and has been a persistent barb to Blade. Boasting superhuman skills such as strength, speed, senses, reflexes, durability, and agility, he can dodge a bullet and even catch an arrow while it's in midair. The character also has shapeshifting capabilities and often uses this power to conceal his true demonic self. History goes back to Dracula, also known as Drake, being born in ancient Sumeria. The origin of Drake turning into a vampire still remains a mystery, but he is without a doubt the first vampire from whom the rest of the vampire race has originated.
Haven't you read Stoker's fable? I was the first of the vampires.
Over eons, Drake has had countless names, but with the development of a more recent society, Drake banished himself and went into hibernation in the desert to escape the dishonored world. It is only after hundreds of years that Drake is awakened by a cluster of vampires led by Danica Talos, for the sole purpose of reshaping the vampire race as daywalkers, and to kill Blade, of course. One can only imagine the brutal fight that took place amongst Drake and Blade, which ultimately ends with the latter piercing the former with an arrow that contained a special serum. The serum in contact with Drake's untainted blood lets out a virus, which slays all the vampires in the immediate territory. Now, visualize Drake lethally wounded and praising Blade for being the only one capable of conquering him. Well, that's exactly what happens. Drake even goes to the extent of saying that the vampire race will live on through him.
Sooner or later, the thirst always wins.
The patriarch of the vampire race and the predominant antagonist in Blade Trinity is portrayed by the British-Australian actor Dominic Purcell.
So sweet.
Reaper strain vampires. Meet the Reapers, who are a new class of vampires only much tougher and deadlier than the normal ones. Not only can these monstrous abominations transform other vampires into Reapers, but they are also quite capable of exterminating all species. Contrasting to the normal vampires that look almost the same as humans, the appearance of a Reaper is quite feral. They look more similar to a ghoul from the mythologies. Their nails and teeth are visibly lengthier, their skin tone is gray, and they hardly have hair. There's also a thin scar extending from the lower lip to the base of the neck. When the Reapers feed, their tongue changes into a proboscis-like organ form, which is apparently linked to the esophagus for feeding purpose. The tongue also splits into 6 different ways at its tip, and that's when one gets to witness the thorn-like smaller fangs along with the 2 pointy, barb-like inner tongues right inside. It is precisely this very tongue that injects the Reaper virus into the bloodstream in those that they feed on. Also, the shoulder blade on their back is transfigured into some sort of gill-like organ that during the feeding process will open to discharge some sort of trigger pheromone, which causes other Reapers to get attracted to the scent of the prey. When it comes to the physical abilities of these Reapers, they are way stronger than the otherwise normal vampires. Their level of intelligence deteriorates to the extent that they become absolutely savage and even lose the ability to talk. Despite this, they are smart enough to trap their prey, as seen in the fight in the city sewers. But if you are still wondering what it is that truly makes these creatures eerie, it has to be the fact that they can walk on the walls, the way spiders do. There's also one major trait of the Reapers that cannot be missed out on. It is their durability and regenerative healing skill, which just shows that even if a Reaper is shot, wounded, or gets its neck broken, the creature will continue to fight as if nothing has happened. Do watch out for the Reapers in the second installment of the Blade movie franchise. Draconis. Created by Mark Guggenheim and Howard Chaykin, the malicious character of Draconis tends to be perhaps one of the few ones who have managed to kill Blade in the comic book series. Having made an appearance in almost 5 issues, history goes back to the time when the vampires of London had mapped out the creation of Draconis to get rid of Blade once and for all in the future. Initially an innocent young boy, Draconis used to work in a church as an acolyte. One day, he was visited by a vampire who promised him the gift of power and immortality, and because the young Draconis believed him, he was soon turned into a vampire in a blasphemous ritual. The boy was chosen because of his unwavering destiny, something which in due course heightened his vampiric powers. The young boy soon grew up to become a holy vampire, one who was strong enough to be invulnerable in terms of the cross, holy water, and even sunlight. Draconis even went to the extent of devouring other vampires to grow more powerful. Blade, who had learnt about Draconis while killing a female vampire, was already back in London, extremely tied up with his killing spree. This is precisely when Draconis was informed about Blade, and the former was beyond exhilarated at the thought of being able to do what he was actually made for, kill Blade. It is during the fight between Blade and Draconis when the latter had pulled out Blade's stake and staked the Daywalker. Thinking Blade to be dead, Draconis left and even threw a party for the London vampires to celebrate the Daywalker's death. It did come as a brutal shock to him when he got 2 unsolicited guests, one in the form of Hannibal King, and the other as Blade. Of course, Blade did not die thanks to the amulet that he possessed at that time. So, believe us when we tell you that putting an end to Draconis was not an easy job. Not only did King shoot him with a shotgun, Blade also had to drink the blood of Draconis first, and then rip his head off. Do watch out for Draconis, who inevitably has been one of the eeriest and bloodthirsty Blade villains. Varnae. Not only is Varnae addressed as the Lord of the Vampires and the very first vampire to have ever walked the earth, he also happens to be one of the most powerful villains of Blade. Created by Steve Perry and Steve Bissette, the character of Varnae first appeared in the 2nd issue of Dracula Lives. An ancient Atlantean sorcerer, Varnae became the first vampire by using the power of the Darkhold Grimoire right before the legendary city sunk. Do not be fooled by the death of Varnae. While it's true that he can only be destroyed by being exposed to sunlight, or say a wooden pole staked right through his heart, he can easily be brought back to life with the help of the Darkhold Grimoire. Stronger than literally every other vampire and capable of moving at incredible speeds in spite of his colossal size, Varnae is one of a kind. Thanks to his telepathic skills, he is able to not only hypnotize humans, but also enslave them at the same time. It would not be wrong to say that Varnae possessed the normal vampire powers, but let us not forget that because he was the first vampire, all his powers were boosted with the added skill of being able to control or possess literally any vampire. Varnae, who has been using the Grimoire to restore his life each time he has met his end, has always used vessels to dwell his essence. It's no wonder he did try to use Blade as one of his vessels, and it goes without saying who emerged triumphant from that encounter. No prizes for guessing Blade. Blackout. Created by Howard Mackie and Javier Salteras, Blackout possesses phenomenal strength, something that is usually common against demons or beings with some degree of demonic heritage. At his strongest, the character of Blackout can lift up to 2 tons and travel at speed that goes way beyond the natural parameters of the best human athlete. Blackout's body is also a lot stronger, resistant to physical injuries, and even capable of withstanding the severities of powerful forces. His vision is boosted to an extent where he can see with perfect clarity, even in total darkness, and is also able to telepathically snuff any source of natural or artificial light source within his immediate territory. Regardless of how he looks with those enhanced metal teeth and nails, Blackout is not really a vampire. He is a Lilith, which happens to be more of a race of demons that was created by Lilith, the mother of demons. It eventually turns out that he is not only a distant relative of Lilith, but also her grandson. It is during the final battle of the Midnight Suns and Lilith in Greenland when Blackout gets slayed by Blade with a sword that gets impaled right through his heart while he was protecting Lilith. The fact that Blackout has been exceedingly vehement with barely any remorse on display, especially post his rebirth, is precisely what makes his character extremely eerie. His sadistic approach towards killing his prey makes him all the more savage. Lilith. One of the most renowned villains to ever face Blade. Meet Lilith. The firstborn child of Dracula is regarded as both a sorceress and a goddess, possessing the powers of the Mesopotamian gods along with the mystic powers that were derived from her degeneration into a succubus. Lilith has superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. She is effortlessly able to annihilate her enemies and even conjure protective shields that can protect vampires from sunlight. It goes without saying that she is way more commanding and stronger than any of her children. Her physical strength intensifies with the number of demons that she gives birth to. Lilith can give birth to immeasurable races that vary from humans to mutants to mystical beasts. She is also capable of reviving any of her fallen children in a number of ways, though the eeriest remains devouring them. That's not all. She is even capable of reviving herself into a much younger and stronger body from the last. Created by ArthurWolfman and the talented late Colan, Lilith as the daughter of Dracula made her first appearance in the first issue of giant-sized chillers featuring the Curse of Dracula in 1974. Lilith as the demon sorceress has been the brainchild of Howard Mackie and Andrew Kubert, and first appeared in the 28th issue of Ghost Rider in 1992.
Son of Dracula, searing the screen with new terror in this weird tale of the living dead.
Xarus. Xarus not only happens to be the son of Dracula, but he is also a senior council member of the vampires that were serving under Dracula. A gifted swordsman as well as a magician, Xarus, like most other vampires, has the ability to turn an individual into a vampire just by biting them. He is exceedingly strong, effortlessly lifting about 4 tons. Boasting superhuman speed, stamina, agility, regenerative healing skills, and immortality, Xarus also possesses claws and fangs. It goes without saying that the character can easily hypnotize others simply by staring at them. Not only is he capable of shapeshifting, but he also holds command over his victim's mind. Having highlighted his powers and abilities, it is important to let the viewers know how villainous this fictitious character actually is. Having grown tired of his father's sovereignty, he simply stages a coup, kills him, and becomes the leader merging all the vampire factions around the world. You will be quite happy to know how he is defeated at the hands of Blade. The vampire hunter severs his right arm and leg before finally decapitating him. Though that didn't really stop Xarus, his head continued to remain responsive even after being detached. So you can imagine the horror. Created by Victor Gischler and Giuseppe Camuncoli, Xarus made his first appearance in the first issue of Death of Dracula back in 2010. Baron Blood. Lord John Falsworth was the youngest of the 2 sons of Lord William Falsworth, who was one of the richest affiliates of the British aristocracy during the late Victorian and Edwardian times. John was furious when his elder brother not only inherited the title, but also the majority of the estate post their father's demise. As destiny had it, Falsworth sought after the castle of Dracula in Romania, and even had plans of controlling Dracula for the sole purpose of achieving a lot of wealth, along with power. However, he soon became a victim to Dracula's hypnotic powers, and was transformed into a blood-sucking monster himself. He returned back to his home country as Baron Blood. This fictional character, besides being one of the oldest villains in Marvel Comics, also happens to be one of the greatest foes of Blade. Not only was this notorious villain a vampire lord, he was also regarded as one of the most sadistic ones. He, along with his clan of vampires, took a special interest in tormenting his victims first, before draining them of their plasma. Fans of Blade are simply going to love how Blade not only engages with the Baron in a duel, but also brings his downfall and detains him in the digital identity securement kit, putting an end to the terror of this vampire once and for all.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.